Good evening, ghouls and fiends. Welcome once again to another edition of the Ministry of Horror. I'm your host, Tez, and this is the weekly one-stop shop for all the latest in horror news, reviews, and the ever-rare featured presentation. I'm actually recording this on the day that I schedule to record it every week. Every week I have in the calendar Tuesday between 7 and 9. Sit down, get a podcast recorded. It's a bit later than 7 and 9. But it's still happening. We're still doing it. We're still doing it for the first time in a long time, and which is pretty wild because obviously this has been in the schedule for a long time, but it's only been recently that we've had a baby, and that life has changed. So it's not as if I can use the excuse of I was never keeping to the schedule because looking after the baby. But no, we're doing things properly now. We're doing things properly. We're doing a podcast on the day that I'm scheduled to do a podcast. What's there to talk about? I mean, so yeah, in the last week, I mean, I think in the interest of keeping life, kind of separate from the horror podcast, I won't go into all the general, nitty gritty of fatherhood because, well, the only kind of update that I can kind of give on that as opposed to the last week is we're trying to figure out a good routine between me and the wife on when to sleep, because we're in the period of 3-hourly window feeds, which every 3 hours is not a very long time, especially because each feed can generally take about an hour, all things considered. And also getting poo attacked. Yeah, had that a couple of times now. Yeah, almost vomited today. The smell. My God, the smell. But yeah, that's all the fun stuff that I say fun in quotation marks. That's all part and parcel of the joys of being a parent. But no, our little baby is incredible. The wife's doing incredible. So yeah, we'll if there's any particular funny things that occur in the week in our catch up, I'll go into it. But otherwise, it's all good, baby. It's all good. Warhammer wise, where have I got to really on that? I have managed to do a couple of bits of painting in the tail end of last week. I'd started doing a bit of a batch paint on 5 Deathwatch, 3 Deathwatch veterans, 2 of which I didn't actually realise I'd built in the exact same style, which is a little bit annoying. I just hadn't even picked up on that. But never mind. And 2 converted Armageddon box Space Marines that I'm painting as if they are Deathwatch. I haven't actually got that much left to do on them, but I have found that I'm at the tail end of the paint where it's just the shades, the trim, which I'm not bothering with this time because these are just grunts, They're just grunts to go in the army. I'm not that fussed about them being parade ready, battle ready. As long as you've got your 3 to 5 whatever it is main colours done, well, that's done. It's their shoulders, their paladins, that I haven't done yet, which I'm sort of putting off because it's just this bit boring, isn't it? I've got to look up what the colour scheme is for, salamanders or exorcists or iron fists or whatever. That's this tail end of that. I'm really more keen on getting on with some of my demons for the World Eaters army. I have Scarbrand and a Bloodthirster to do. So, that's my niche, is building and painting demons. I have a lot more fun. Well, I have fun doing the whole thing. It's I've said many times now on the podcast before that Warhammer has sort of become my therapy. Just because you just zone in. You just zone in on what you're doing. Great. Horror-wise, now, I've managed to watch one film, which is what we're going to be reviewing later on. I had started a film called Hellcat on Shudder, but I could have finished watching that today. I was on daddy duty a bit this afternoon, but I don't know how I feel about watching a horror film while I've got the baby right next to me. Not just that, but also it's one of these films where Hellcat is a sole focus film. You know, you're focusing on one character through. So far, the majority. I've got about 45 minutes into it. On a previous sitting, I should say. But you're focusing on this one character, this woman in peril. So it's a lot of just heavy breathing. And again, I just thought it just sounds a bit weird because I'm going to have the baby in the room with me while I'm watching a horror film, but the horror film is just this woman in peril going. I just thought, it's just nah. I'm not. I'll finish watching that another time. We'll review it on a future show. I don't really want to, if it was something whimsical, like a Nightmare on Elm Street or a classic like, Halloween or whatnot, okay, I wouldn't think too much about it because hopefully it wouldn't leave too much of an imprint. But at the same point, I just think, well, whilst on solo daddy duty, maybe don't put a horror film on because they are sponges. So it's not worth it. So we've got the one film to watch, which is Passenger 2026. Going to be reviewing that a bit later on. Tons of horror news to get through. No horror gaming, no gaming really at all recently. I have been meaning to have a look on my Switch because I have seen the Lord of the Rings War in the North, which I never played back in the day, but that's now available on Switch 2 and Xbox and PS, I believe, and probably also Steam as well, I'd imagine, or something along those lines. But I've always heard that that's a really good Lord of the Rings game. I imagine combat-wise is a little bit dated because I think it was an Xbox 360 game, or potentially even PS2. Not sure, but it's an older generation game, so I imagine a lot of the combat is probably in that style. If you're watching this on video, you'll have noticed, oh my god, I no longer look like I'm trying to relive the grunge era of the 90s, of which I was a child during the grunge era, but I finally managed to get a haircut. In terms of life updates, that's a pretty big one for me. I've wanted a haircut for like 4 months. Bedbound for 2 months made it impossible. Limited availability due to things like work and whatnot made the next part impossible. And then everything that's gone on in the last few weeks with the hospitalization and the arrival of our daughter has meant it's been impossible. I know, woe's me, big life events, and all I'm worried about is a haircut. That's not true. But it's something where I have just wanted to get my haircut for so long. And yeah, pretty pleased with it. They did the beard as well. It just feels nice to not have that on my head for now. Yeah, but gaming wise, anyway, start tracking myself getting back to the gaming. I just haven't really, not so much had the time to game, probably not had the headspace or the mood. I've sort of found that when there is a pocket of time where maybe it's a sleep slot that both the wife and daughter are in, I'll kind of think, okay, Warhammer, a bit of therapy, Warhammer, or last night I want to watch a horror film because I want to do a podcast. I haven't had a chance to watch any films recently, so I'm going to watch a horror film. You get these little pockets of time, and I haven't then thought of any of those points of doing gaming. I mean, the Xbox is in the bedroom. I wouldn't really. I mean, it wouldn't. I imagine it wouldn't be a problem, but I also just wouldn't want to be a disturbance or whatever. So I haven't gamed them, but I also just haven't really even thought about it. Because when I say about coming to time, I mean, one thing is sleep is obviously one thing. But yeah, as I mentioned earlier on, when you have every 3 hours a feed, and that feed can last for an hour or so, I mean, we will often do solo feeds. Like Victoria will quite often do the ones like in the middle of the night, like 3 a.m., 6 a.m. or whatnot, while I can then sleep. So that's good. But when doing those feeds, because they can last a while, it really messes things up in terms of a sleep schedule. And because of getting to the cot, and we'll sort out the setup of our room at some point anyway. But it means that we're, if I'm doing the feed, it's naturally we're gonna wake her up, and if she's doing the feed this time, it will naturally wake me up. So we're trying to find that that sweet spot, that balance, and I think we're getting there. But yeah, point being then is that I haven't in those times sort of thought, oh, do you know what? While we're in the bedroom, I'll turn the Xbox on, I'll do some gaming. It's the thought has just never really crossed my mind. And this afternoon, I played a little bit on the PlayStation in the living room. What did I play? I started playing Dying Light 2, because that's on PlayStation. It's a PS Plus free game for the month. Didn't really get enough into it. And again, even though the baby was not looking at the TV at all, you're straight away decapitating zombies and having heads flying off in every which direction. I thought, I know that she's not listening to this. I know she's not looking at the TV, but I don't really feel comfortable that if she was taking it in, that her first experience of video gaming is going to be zombie decapitations. I think so. Maybe like a Disney game or something is an easier introduction. But I know far too young to understand any of this stuff. But you do start becoming more conscious and more aware the impact around you on watching horror films. Weird changes you, man. But yeah, point being, not much video gaming been done. But let's start off the horror news with some video game news. Why don't we, huh? Why don't we give this a go, yeah? So first up, horror news all comes from bloodydisgusting.com. Check them out, yada, yada, yada. You know the drill at this stage. The bug hunt begins today with Aliens Fireteam Elite 2 now available. Mike Wilson writes, load up your smart gun as Cold Iron Studios' Aliens Fireteam Elite 2 is out today on PS5, Xbox Series. Now that's interesting because I have got like £13 or so of credit on Xbox that I keep meaning to use, but there's not been any games where I've thought that's either too cheap of a game that I'm going to waste my credits because it's going to be rubbish, or too expensive of a game that I'm going to think, well, I'm getting a discount, but I'm still having to spend out the arse on it. But the Aliens Fireteam Elite previous game was not a full price game, which is great, and it was good fun. I wasn't very good at it, but it's good fun, and we love the Aliens universe. So anyway, it's out today on PS5, Xbox Series, and PC via Steam and the Epic Games Store. As mentioned previously, the game will also be available coming to Switch 2 later this fall. Once again, up to 4 players in Aliens Fireteam Elite 2 can suit up as members of the Colonial Marines. This is not a rescue mission, it's a fight for survival. Xenomorphs stalk the corridors, ambush from the shadows, and swarm in overwhelming numbers. You must coordinate with your fire team, utilising each class's unique abilities, and adapt on the fly as encounters escalate from tense standoffs to all-out war. Fireteam Elite 2 features deeper squad mechanics, smarter enemies, and a fully customizable specialist class that lets players mix and match major and minor abilities from every available class into one Marine. Build a loadout tailored to your exact playstyle, and fill whatever role your squad needs. The game also launches with multiple detected horde maps that will push squads to their limits. Teams will battle through escalating waves of xenomorphs and other deadly enemies, earning increasingly valuable rewards as they survive deeper into the onslaught. Now, from some of the images I've seen, it does look like the Alien Queen features a bit more in this game. Now, I have got Fireteam Elite on PlayStation, I want to say. And it is good, but I'm not very good. I haven't got past like the first couple of levels. The end of the first the end section, the first major level, I think. Just kept getting swarmed and murdered. It's tough. It's tough, or I find it tough because I'm not very good. I'm sure there's plenty of people that are just like, what? It's not that hard. But it's a decent third-person action shooter game. I don't really play online very often. I've got a mate who plays Alien Fireteam Elite, so we've played on that a couple of times. But outside of that, we haven't got like a squad for the 3-man squad. But you do play it as well with CPU, so you don't just have to play it online with complete randoms. You can just decide to play it with the computer controlling the other 2 members of your squad. It's decent. I'm going to keep an eye out for this one because the trailers do look fun. I mean, Graphically, it does look more of the same. It doesn't look like it's sort of, bigger budget, advancing further. But, if it's got new maps, if it's got awesome encounters, if you've got the Queen featuring a bit more in this, because I know that the Queen was more of a quick time event at the end of the first game. We're always about that. We're always about the Alien Queen featuring. Got to give the Queen some love. Next up, Blumhouse Atomic Monster horror movies have passed $1 billion at the box office this year. John Squires writes, it was back in the early days of 2024 that a massive horror merger was inked, with Jason Blum's Blumhouse and James Wan's Atomic Monster forming a horror superpower. The joint company, Blumhouse Atomic Monster, has been dominating the horror space ever since. Described as a mega house of chills and thrills, Blumhouse and Atomic Monster are now under one roof, with the two brands together able to do more than they could do individually. And the partnership has proven to be a massive success, with Deadline reporting this week that Blumhouse Atomic Monster releases have passed $1 billion at the box office this year alone. Those 2026 theatrical horror releases include Lee Cronin's The Mummy, $90.5 million worldwide, that is. Backrooms, $396.5 million worldwide. Obsession, $501.6 million worldwide. And Insidious Out of the Further, $60.1 million worldwide thus far. Deadline additionally notes it's the second time that the combined labels have yielded $1 billion since their 2024 merger after last year. However, if you were to count the labels' grosses combined prior to the merger, this would be the third time in 4 years that Blumhouse and Atomic Monster titles have grossed over $1 billion in a given year. And then it kind of breaks down a couple of the other big hits. Speaking predominantly of which, of Curry Barker's Obsession, which, huge fan of. It's a great film. I mean, that is awesome news. I think with Blumhouse, they have more hits than misses in terms of their releases. They're not all, of course, they're not all great. You get ones that are very much cookie cutter and horror by numbers. But they do have their fingers in many pies when it comes to a lot of the huge releases. And, whether that's because they put the money into the marketing, which then helps spread it. I mean, films like Obsession, I think, was certainly a more word of mouth type film. I mean, Curry Barker, prior to Obsession's release, he was known to an extent in the horror world, probably a little bit more known in like the Instagram comedy world or TikTok comedy world, the social media comedy world, but not like on a name brand basis, right? He wasn't a name. Some horror short fans would have known of, The Chair, Milk and Cereal, and a couple of others, but he wasn't, he wasn't as big out there. And now tons of people now know of Curry Barker. He's been in a Weezer video recently. It's his career has skyrocketed as a result of Obsession. So it's not as if, word of mouth. It's not as if he was a huge name, which then projected the film to do huge numbers. It had incredible word of mouth from its festival appearances, and the marketing has then jumped onto that to really push it further. It could easily have been a film that would just been put out with not much fanfare, and if people weren't talking about it online, you could be looking at I don't know, 30 to 50 million return worldwide. But as such, it's done gangbusters, and I believe it deserves it. I really enjoy that film. Liminal horror hit Backrooms creeps onto HBO Max next month. Megan Navarro writes, venture into the endless abyss of Captain Clark's Ottoman Empire next month when director Kane Parsons' Backrooms makes its streaming debut. The liminal horror movie will debut exclusively on HBO Max in the US on September 25th. The film will debut on HBO Linear on September 26th at 8 p.m. Chiwetel Ejiofor stars in Backrooms as the owner of Captain Clark's Ottoman Empire, who discovers a strange doorway in the basement of the furniture showroom. He sets out to explore the mysterious liminal space, walking headfirst into a creepypasta nightmare. Renate Reinsve, Mark Duplass, Finn Bennett, and Lakita Maxwell also star in Backrooms. Will Sudik wrote the script based on Parsons' creepypasta-inspired video series, which debuted in 2022 and has amassed over 190 million views to date. Exciting. I did enjoy Backrooms. It was one of the films that I would have liked to have seen at the cinema. Didn't manage to get to see it. Heard more mixed things about it than Obsession. But you know what? I actually really enjoyed it. I think it was shot incredibly well. And, check out the Backrooms review show if you want to hear my full review on that one. Next, Donnie Darko. The Philosophy of Time Travel. Richard Kelly's official sequel novel is coming soon. John Squires writes, to celebrate the 25th anniversary of the cult classic film, Donnie Darko is getting a sequel with filmmaker Richard Kelly from filmmaker Richard Kelly with the upcoming Donnie Darko, The Philosophy of Time Travel. Written by Richard Kelly himself, the sequel novel releases in late 2026. Variety details in their exclusive report, the approximately 800-page book will take place in 1988, in the immediate aftermath of the original film, which famously ended with the death of Jake Gyllenhaal's titular Donnie Darko, a Southern California teen who spends the better part of the movie in a dreamlike state while anticipating the end of the world. Even more exciting here is that Richard Kelly is planning to use the upcoming sequel novel as the springboard to bring Donnie Darko back to the screen with future film projects. According to Kelly, the book sequel is the first step in a larger plan to make multiple Donnie Darko film sequels. Variety details. The filmmaker's goal is to have this novel adapted into an animated motion capture movie and then continue the story with a live-action project that jumps 28 years into the future. Donnie Darko, The Philosophy of Time Travel, takes place in the 14 months after Donnie Darko's death, while a potential movie sequel to come in its wake would take that huge leap forward in time and bring the main cast of the 2001 movie back together on screen. My caveat with doing a real sequel is that I wanted to reunite the original cast, and I want to take it on to a gigantic scale that takes time, and it has a price tag, and it's hard to pull this off because it's multiple movies, Kelly tells the outlet. It's this big, gigantic, unwieldy thing that I have to sort of wrestle into submission, but in my mind, that's what it should be. Just given the way this movie is connected with people for so long. So I've set out to just build the whole thing out and map the entire thing out, knowing that there's a lot of challenges associated with doing that. Kelly continues, I think what I realised as the story gets bigger and bigger and bigger is that I needed to go back in time and away from the sequel and tell the story of what happens in the 14 months after Donnie's death, like immediately after his death, because there's so much essential information in that section of the sequel. And in my mind, I was like, why don't I actually put together a novel and just publish that part of the sequel as a novel so that I can release it into the world and that will set the ship on its voyage to wherever this goes. And so this, in my mind, is the final puzzle piece to launch the sequel and to see what becomes of it. Richard Kelly's Donnie Darko did get a movie sequel back in 2009 with S. Darko, though that much maligned movie was famously made without the involvement of creator Richard Kelly. The book is being published by Range Literary Publishing. Okay, now, I haven't seen Donnie Darko for a very long time, but I was a huge fan of it when it came out. It really did connect with me. I think that the dreamlike ethereal state of a lot of the scenes in it, the kind of the questions of timelines and time moving in circles and portals and all that stuff, and foreseeing that for this terrible future to not occur, then he needs to not have gotten out of bed and have essentially been crushed to death. It's very, very interesting. And as I say, the music and everything, it all just kind of, it was a smorgasbord of film content that really worked for me. And I think it's because it came out at that sort of age where you're used to seeing film as the big blockbusters, the big event films. And when you then start exploring the lesser commercially known, or the films that didn't make hundreds or whatever, hundreds of millions of dollars, but are beloved, that it expands your tastes in cinema for sure. I never have seen S. Darko, the sequel, because I always heard it had terrible reviews. And as mentioned here, it's not got Richard Kelly's involvement in at all. My hesitance with this is that it's a bit late, isn't it? It's quite late, and Richard Kelly's name got catapulted onto the map with Donnie Darko. But I can't think of much that he's done since that's had the same success. That's not me trying to dunk on Richard Kelly. That's me kind of trying to pose the question of, is this a situation where decades down the line, success hasn't followed up as you would have liked in subsequent films. So why don't we go back to what was successful and make a sequel to it? Now, he may well have had a ton of ideas that he's now putting forward into something coherent, and that'd be great. And I would be interested to read the book once it's out. But I do have an element of pessimism where I think, is this a little bit of a cash grab and trying to recapture, some of what made you famous, baby. I hope that's not the case, but that's kind of where my head is going. Next, RoboCop. Dan Stevens will star in Prime Video series as Alex Murphy, RoboCop. John Squires, of course, writes, pop culture icon RoboCop is coming back online with a new series based on the classic dystopian sci-fi action film, and Deadline reports that Dan Stevens will star. Dan Stevens will play Alex Murphy, RoboCop, in the upcoming Prime Video series. In the 8-episode RoboCop television series in the works at Prime Video, a giant tech conglomerate convinces the city to place a powerful robot on its police force, a robot implanted with the consciousness of a beloved fallen officer, Alex Murphy. Peter Oko will be writer and showrunner, with James Wan executive producing for Blumhouse Atomic Monster. RoboCop co-creator Ed Neumeyer is an executive producer. I've been a massive fan of RoboCop forever, so getting to help bring this world to television is a dream, said Wan. What Paul Verhoeven created in 1987 was decades ahead of its time, and its questions about technology, identity, and who corporations really serve have only grown more urgent. There's quite a lot more there. But RoboCop is a franchise. We had 3 original films. There's been a TV series back in the day. There's also been a selection of made-for-TV films. I think there's like 4 of them. And we've recently had the RoboCop Rogue City video game, and then there was a sequel to that more recently. I mean, I saw RoboCop as a kid growing up, and I've seen it again more recently. The first one's decent. I've just never really paid attention to the sequels. I mean, I've heard that the second one is okay. I've heard the third is terrible. And I've not watched any of the other iterations from that point onwards. And the remake was meh. Yeah, I'd forgotten there was a remake because it was incredibly forgettable and didn't look like RoboCop. And I get if you're doing a new version, you don't need to. You're not tied to the constraints which probably led to some of the artistic decisions in the original. That being said, it didn't look very good, so that's always going to hamper it. It's one thing changing things to try and do your own spin on things, but when your own spin looks like dog piss, it's not really going to work. But I'll keep an eye out for it. Now I'm going to have a quick swig of drink. Very thirsty. Last Chance Motel. Trailer. Danielle Harris and Scout Taylor Compton reunite to direct this horror movie. John Squires writes. A dream wedding spirals into a blood-soaked nightmare in the upcoming Last Chance Motel, which was written and directed by Halloween franchise favourites Scout Taylor Compton and Danielle Harris. Taylor Compton and Harris also star in the Motel horror movie. Debuted by Fangoria this week, watch the official Last Chance Motel trailer below. The Horror Collective will release the film on digital outlets October 6th, 2026. Last Chance Motel follows a newlywed couple whose dream wedding spirals into a bloody nightmare when they uncover that their secluded venue, a desolate motel deep in the Nevada desert, is run by a relentless, bloodthirsty family with dark secrets. Described as a pulse-pounding psychological thriller with horror elements, the film pays homage to classic slashers while injecting a modern psychological twist. Heather Langenkamp, Sierra McCormick, Zachary Rosen, Robert Allen Mukes, Shane West, and Monica Keena also star. We knew exactly what kind of film the genre is missing right now. A tight, mean, character-driven slasher that doesn't apologise for being horror, said Harris. We've been on the receiving end of the camera for 40 years between us. We know what works. We know what fans actually want to see. Last Chance Motel is built from that DNA. Horror has always been the genre that holds a mirror up to what scares us most, and right now, audiences are hungry for stories that feel both visceral and personal, added Taylor Compton. Last Chance Motel is a film I'm incredibly proud of, and I think it speaks to something universal, the idea that danger can hide in the most ordinary places. So, last I'd heard that these two had a falling out. apparently not anymore. I don't know what the falling out was about. I mean, who really cares? But I know that they had a podcast together and it stopped fairly abruptly, and supposedly they weren't on good terms for whatever the case. So I remember trying to listen to the podcast a little while ago. It's a few years ago now. Because, Scout Taylor Compton was in Rob Zombie's Halloween, which is fine. It's alright. But Danielle Harris, who's also in that, more famous, was in Halloween 4 and 5. She's been in, Urban Legends, Hatchet 2 and 3, so on and so forth. She's horror, legendary status. And I tried listening to this podcast, and it was basically just them talking about sex toys for 45 minutes. Like, fair enough. If that is a topic of conversation that you want to talk about, sure. My assumption was that if it's two actresses that are friends from the horror world, they'd maybe talk about projects, either future things on the horizon or things, how things were working on Halloween or whatever. No, it could have just been that I just happened to jump in on a random episode. I don't know, but it was not good. Anyway, moving on, we've got one more bit of news left. The Institute Season 2 first images tease the next chapter of Stephen King's horror series, Megan Navarro writes. Mike Flanagan's Carrie isn't the only Stephen King series featuring telekinesis on the horizon. Screen Rant has confirmed the Institute Season 2 is also set to arrive this fall, along with first look images. While MGM Plus hasn't revealed an exact premiere date yet, Season 2 will include 8 episodes. Season 1, teen genius Luke Ellis is kidnapped and awakens at the Institute, a facility full of children who all got there the same way he did and who are all possessed of unusual abilities. In a nearby town, haunted former police officer Tim Jameson has come looking to start a new life, but the peace and quiet won't last, as his story and Luke's are destined to collide. Season 2 will pick up after the Season 1 finale, in which the survivors discovered similar facilities all over the world. Set free but hunted, new dangers await the escapees from the Institute, and I can't wait, said Stephen King of the renewal. The series hails from director-executive producer Jack Bender and writer-executive producer Benjamin Cavell and MGM Plus Studios. Both filmmakers are no strangers to the world of Stephen King. I thoroughly enjoyed Season 1. I thought it was generally a pretty entertaining show. The novel that it's based on is decent. The Stephen King don't really miss, but his writing in the last few years has been fine. It's all been decent. I say that because there's not been too many of the stories that I've been absolutely blown away by, but I always, more often than not, have a good time reading a Stephen King book. I think Never Flinch was the only one recently where I've been like, oh, I mean, one, it was Holly fatigue because we've had so many Holly books recently, but also it wasn't as good as the other Holly books. Holly was pretty good. The Outsider, Mr. Mercedes trilogy, or the Bill Hodges trilogy, they're all very good. But The Institute is a pretty good novel. I'll give it that. And the series, as I say, really enjoyed it. The only reason I had MGM Plus for a little while was because of watching The Institute weekly. That's how they got me. Anyway, let's jump in to our horror reviews, because I'm already flagging on energy. I'd hope to do a bit of Warhammer as well tonight, but I don't think so. Passenger is a 2026 American supernatural horror film directed by Andre Ovredal. The film stars Jacob Scipio, Lou Lobel, and Melissa Leo. Now, with all our horror reviews on Ministry of Horror, what we do is we talk a little bit about the plot. No real major spoilers. We then talk about the highs and the lows, and then I'll give the film a score out of 10. Just my opinion. If you agree or disagree, hit me up on socials. Ministry of Horror on all platforms. Two friends, Danielle and Lucas, are driving down a dark road at night. While stopped on the side of the road for Lucas to pierce, Daniel is suddenly killed by an unseen attacker, and Lucas flees. Elsewhere, couple Maddie and Tyler are celebrating 6 weeks of being on the road, having recently left their jobs and taken up the van lifestyle. They pull over on a residential street to camp for the night, where Tyler proposes to Maddie, who accepts. After a neighborhood watch member tells them they are not permitted to camp on the street, the two hit the road again. While driving on a remote highway, Lucas speeds ahead of their van frantically. Moments later, Maddie and Tyler pull over when they find Lucas's car crashed against a tree. Lucas tries to call out the passenger seat, but is pulled back inside by an unseen force and killed. Dun dun dun. Okay, so Passenger had decent enough marketing in that it had a UK cinema release. I never really considered too much about forcing my way to get down to the cinema to see it. I mean, with the operation on my ankle, and everything that's gone on, with life recently, the cinema has sort of come to one side. And I only say that because also at the same time, there's not been that many horror releases during the period. Of course, yes, I made sure to get down for Obsession because I had to. Couldn't get down for Backrooms. Couldn't get down for this. But again, this is the sort of film where if I was at that point regularly driving with no whatever, I'd have been like, well, what film should we watch this week? Maybe we'll go and watch Passenger and use the Odeon Amazon deal, and then it's only really costing $5 to watch a film. It's the same amount that you'd spend to rent it. But yeah, it didn't. The trailers didn't do enough for me to think this is a must-watch. I have to get down to the cinema to see it. It did just about enough, similar to the Undertone, to be in my consciousness to look out for it. So a little bit disappointing, this one. The focus is on Maddie and Tyler. I say more specifically Maddie, who's got second billing on this, which I think is a little bit backwards because she is our main protagonist. There seems to be a little bit of reluctance with this van life. Now fiance Tyler definitely seems to be more involved in that world. There's a point when he is at some van life convention. He sees someone who's like a YouTube van life celebrity and it's like, oh my god, I base all my stuff on you, you're so cool. And she's not really that fussed, so you can kind of tell from there that he is the one that's really sort of pushing this lifestyle. But when they come across this crash and see some weird occurrences, but then they notice that on the car that's been crashed, there's these 3 claw marks. And the same 3 claw marks they then later find are now on their van. Like kind of a calling card for this this entity. So, what works in this film? It does have some good jumpy moments occasionally. Some, because some of them are just so openly foreshadowed throughout that it just loses all effectiveness. Like, if you're going to build up to a jump scare, you have to only do it like a couple of times, a handful of times tops. It's a lot of that, a lot of, the camera's panning around while the character is looking from left to right. They're looking from left to right. They're looking from left to... Oh my god, there's something there which was not there a minute, like a second ago. It's that kind of thing where that can be effective, but not if you're going to do it every 10 minutes. Which is a bit of an exaggeration here, but you get the point. It's a bit of hyperbole to hammer the point home. Yeah, there are a couple of attack moments which are good. They're jumpy. And there's some decent, limited but decent gore. The acting is generally all right. The characters are nice enough. I guess Maddie is a bit more likable than Tyler, but Tyler's not really a bad guy. It comes down to really, I guess, the passenger in this. It does look kind of creepy, but its mixture of strength and abilities does make you sort of think like a Buffy the Vampire Slayer or X-Files. Well, maybe not so much X-Files, but like a Buffy the Vampire Slayer Charmed monster of the week type deal. In that, there's certain moments where it's come to get the character. It's come to get the character, but then they got away. Oh, it's going to attack Maddie. It's going to attack Tyler now, but they just about got away because, it appears in the distance to scare them. They turn around, they turn back, and it's right there close to them. But it's there just to go blah, basically. And this is me trying to apply horror logic or logic to horror, and you sometimes have to have a, quite often not, you have to have a disbelief of, you have to suspend your disbelief, I should say. But it doesn't really work when one character who's had no interaction with the passenger before gets their head almost ripped off. So it has the ability and the strength to just do that to someone that's going to help our characters. Okay, brutal, right? But then in other instances, when it has interactions with Maddie and Tyler, what is this? Like, if your aim is to kill them, then just kill them. And obviously that wouldn't really work with the film. The film's runtime would be 25 minutes as opposed to an hour and a half. But you do sort of think, like, if you have the ability to just appear out of nowhere and do something like that, rip a head off, basically, what's the point? What are you then doing with these characters? You know, like, other than for the cool visual moments or to build a bit of suspense, you're doing that at the sake of logic going out the window, which is a bit of a big deal, unfortunately. I mean, I overall had a decent time watching this. I just felt that quality-wise, it was very by the numbers. There's not too much to write home about this one. I'm going to give Passenger 5.5 out of 10. So that, Ghouls and Fiends, brings us to the end of another edition. Sorry, I've got the burps now from drinking some Pepsi. There we go. That brings us to the end of another edition of the Ministry of Horror. Check us out on the various platforms. Obviously, for the podcast, if you listen to this on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or Amazon Music, be sure to follow the channel, give it a like, review, 5 stars, but say whatever you want. That would be much appreciated. It does also go out on YouTube when I remember to upload it. Occasionally, shorts also go out on YouTube when I remember to upload them. And check out the other socials, TikTok being our big one still by quite a country mile. Let's just keep that one building. At some point, it's going to get to a decent number. It's a decent number now, but at some point it's going to get to a much nicer number. But if you really want to support the channel, we do have a Patreon, patreon.com/Ministry of Horror. There are a number of different tiers there. Bonus content and blogs and whatnot occasionally go on there. Well, they do. I already am going to be recording this week, when time permits, bonus podcast, which is going to be looking at when did a horror franchise fall off? At what point was there a narrative tipping point, or narrative or performance tipping point? So yeah, I'm going to be looking into a few different franchises where I feel this is the moment when it lost its, when it just lost its spark, it lost its joie de vivre. So the only way to listen to that will be supporting the channel on, I was going to say Spotify, but no, Patreon. Of course, I need to give a shout out to our tiered members. We have Vix, of course, Newbie. We have JP and also Gruff. Thank you very much, guys. Much appreciated. Always appreciated. And everyone else that's a free member as well. It helps build up the exposure of the channel. Right. I'm rapidly losing the ability to keep my eyes open, but I am staying awake for a while. So I may bust out some Warhammer, some W40K, who knows. I most likely will, but anyway, we'll get on to that. Thank you very much. Catch you again. Have a good evening, or morning, or day, whenever you listen to this podcast. Goodbye.